of the Santos dolls that actually inspired me to do my Frida doll, and she's a replica of the old style Santos dolls. But you can see they all have a similar kind of persona. Here's my first, and just to demonstrate that you can make them with different kinds of bottoms, this is a plant stand. And here's Frida, our project that we'll be working on today. And I hope you have fun with this project, because I really had a lot of fun putting her together. So we'll see you soon, and we'll make art together. Welcome to the Make a Frida Santos doll project, part 1. We'll start by reviewing some of the supplies you'll need to make this project wonderful. We have newspaper, a jar of gesso, some coasters made of cork, creative paper clay. It could be any kind of paper clay that you can get your hands on, styrofoam ball, wide masking tape, brushes, branches, some flour I put in a jar, and a selection of acrylic paints for painting your doll afterwards. Well, I think we're ready to begin now. Well, here we are at my work table, and a couple of the supplies I neglected to mention is a pair of scissors, and you can see here I'm making these little niches in the coaster. They're actually a cork plant holder or something like that, but you can find anything that's round and light. I like the cork because it was nice and light, and it was economical. So here I am putting some branches that I've cut to size. I've tried to make them as close to equal size to each other, and I think I have 6 in total here. And the idea is to put a little niche all around your circle and kind of evenly place your wood. And when I've put the little niche in, or the little space for the wood, now I'm putting some glue with a hot glue gun. Watch your fingers, watch you don't burn yourself. I pretty well always burn myself, and it's not fun, so be very careful. And it should stick in really easily because it should adhere well because of the cork being wood and the wood being wood as well. So they're compatible. And we'll go all around the circle and do the very same thing. We'll just try to space our branches evenly. This is the cage part of our doll that we're constructing. You see I have 4 put together now. I've turned it upside down, and I'm trimming the tops of the branches because they weren't quite even, and we want the doll to sit evenly on her cage, and makes it look easy. I think if you have good sharp scissors, this should be a pretty easy thing to do. And if you're smart and enough to measure at the very beginning, you probably won't have to do this. I tend to do things a little ad hoc, and then it catches up with me afterwards. But as we're going through this tutorial, you should note that I am doing this for the first time. So although I thought of the concept ahead of time and how I would like to put it together, and I've certainly gathered information from other people that have put together dolls such as this, it's not all in my head. But this particular aspect is, and it looks a little hinky right now, but it will come together, I promise. We'll do the same with the top. We'll put in the little niches all around, and then when we've created those spaces for the wood to sit in, then that will adhere very well when we apply the hot glue to the edges. So you see here we are, we've got the wood sitting nicely, and I don't really mind if the wood sits a little over the top. It adds to the rustic kind of feel of this doll. If you want to make it perfectly flush, then please go ahead, but as it stands for me, this is fine. And then I found something that came with the coaster, was a round cardboard circle, and I thought that would be a good idea to put in. I've actually traced it in a larger piece of cardboard, a thicker piece, and I'm going to cut the circle out again. And you're wondering, why am I doing this? Well, it'd be very difficult to do the body of your doll directly on the cage right now. That would be a little bit awkward. So I'm giving the body a place to sit. And you can see how it sits rather nicely into our cage. I want the skirt and the body of the doll to fit nicely into the space. So here we've got that all settled now. And now I've actually gone ahead to make some of this, because it's a bit tedious if I show you every little tiny step. But I'm making really a cone out of newspaper. Right now it looks like a witch's hat. And I trust me, it will look like a body in a little while. But what I've done is use very wide masking tape, and that really helps for me to expedite this process. This is not exactly the more enjoyable part of the exercise. You're creating an armature, you're creating the basis of your body. So you want to have something to work with. And really, this is going to have to be your personal taste, but I work it into a cone shape, and I stuff it and tape it again till I've got a nice solid body. I want something that's going to be able to sit upright on my circle, which will be her base, which will go on top of the cage. So this is not exactly conventional paper mache. In the old days, when I used to make paper mache figures, I would sometimes make a very, use chicken wire or use a stiffer kind of armature with papers. But for our purposes, I think it's fine just to shape your figure into kind of a conish shape. And I added more paper and I thickened it up. So you just keep layering. It's still, again, less tedious than paper mache, because with paper mache you're going to be using lots of paper mache glue or flour and water, whatever you use. And that becomes waiting for each layer to dry, whereas with this process you don't have to wait for it to dry, you just have to keep taping. But I would really totally recommend a thick masking tape, because the thin might get frustrating after a while. So this shouldn't take you very long. This is, I'm showing a little bit about what I'm doing. I actually built up, you're trying to form a shape that you won't have to work too much later to build upon. So I'm giving her a little bit of shoulder area by thickening up, and I put a band of paper at the top, and now I'm taping it. So I'm giving her a bit more of a figure. As we can see, she doesn't have, she's a woman, so she has to have a little curves, I think. And the other thing that I'm going to do is start forming her skirt. And this will help give her a little bit of shape also. I'm a lefty, and you can see how my awkwardness with tape, filming, and trying to put this figure together look a lot more awkward than it will be for you to actually do this, I'm sure. Has a lot more, she's starting to have more shape now. I'm much more satisfied with her shape. She looks less like a witch's hat. I can see her, she's about the size I want her to be. Proportionally, I like her to be, her body to be somewhere around the same depth as the cage. But really, this is personal. You can make your cage doll as large or as small as you like, because as you'll note later on, which I'll show you different kinds of armatures, you can use many different found supplies for your cage. You don't have to do this process. And this is really cute. I've got a little bit of a branch I've cut. I stuck it in a styrofoam ball. And this looks rather childlike, but in a way it'll come together, believe me. So we've stuck her in, and she's got some shoulders there, as you can see. I think that's important. Doesn't look at all like Frida right now, but what I'm doing now is putting a little hot glue on her bottom, which I'm sure doesn't hurt at all. Try not to glue myself. And then I'm placing the armature, the figure, in the middle of my circle that I cut out, and kind of pressing it down to get a good hold. Okay, so now we have a base, and now we have her figure coming together. So you can see she's looking rather jaunty now. I've put masking tape over her shoulders and around too, to secure the head a little bit more and to add a little bit more shape. I'm going to cover as much of her body, in fact probably all her body, with masking tape, so that none of the paper is showing. This will offer me a smoother surface when we do our next step. And the other thing I've done is run some masking tape from the circle up her body, so it forms a skirt. And you can see now what I'm doing is, here's another example of this. I'm pressing the tape around and below the circle, and trying to cut my masking tape out without looking too clumsy, and tamping or pressing it down. I've added a little bit of extra paper in her skirt and her body, her lower body, just to give it a little bit more shape and weight. You can play with this. You're really just trying to form your own shape. And you can see I've secured it with the tape to the bottom of the circle as well. So again, for more stability. I'm looking to cover the whole body with tape, once I have a shape I'm really happy with, we can go on to the next step. Okay, so now I've added the body. I've placed it, glued it onto the base of our cage, and now I'm adding further strips of masking tape to the base. So you can see now we're getting it fastened together. So I've gone right under that circle. I've taken the tape up. I'm making the skirt even larger, and I'm trying to cover up any gaps that I come across as well too. And some of the tape is going horizontal as well as vertical. So that'll give a nice, it'll adhere really nicely if we have the continuity right through the body. See, I'm adding tape to the gaps. I'm pretty happy with it now. It's, you know, it's very hard to get it exact with the tape, but if we were doing paper mache in the old-fashioned way, we'd also have the same issue. So I'm pretty happy with the shape that she's taken on, and I've come back to my home now to work on the rest of it, because sometimes if I don't have time in the studio and I'm able to work a little bit at home and I don't have too much in the way of supplies, I can do that here. So you can see I've got a jar of my flour and a jar of gesso. And what I'm going to do is add some gesso to a bowl. You might want to use a bowl that you're not too fond of, just in case it gets really icky. And I mix it in like a paste. It's rather thick, but it's still malleable enough so that I can work with it. It's not too powdery. It's got a little bit of moisture to it too. But what you want is the flour will give us kind of a paper mache feel, almost like I call it like a doll drywall. It really ends up coming out very clay-like. And I did discover this on the web. There's always lots of little tips you can find, and I thought this was brilliant. You may have even used this before, but for me it was a revelation. I thought it was really great to be able to use flour, like something that would be around my house, and then add it to the gesso to kind of basically skip several steps, because to do this in the old-fashioned way would have taken many days. This I could do within the same day, whereas I'd have to wait for all the layers to dry if I was doing it in the classic way. So what I'm using a large brush, which is easier to work with. Depending on the size of your doll, mine's I would call a medium-sized doll. And what I'm trying to do is cover up all the areas where the tape meets the tape. So luckily with the gesso and the flour together, you're getting a nice kind of almost like a stucco-y texture. And you can see how it's covering up quite nicely the tape. And I might have to go over this a few times. But this is the part I really enjoy. It's fun painting this product onto your doll, because it's looking more sculptural now and more clay-like. And you can see I've added a few more layers of tape to the doll's neck. I work in trying to get somewhat of a proportion happening here, so you want the head to be quite a bit smaller. And I think you're going to develop your doll in your own way, but you can work with this this kind of a mache mix very, very easily. My cat's even quite mystified and excited, I can see. Okay, we're finishing up part 1 of our project, and as you can see, I'm painting the bottom of my cage with gesso, and that will preserve it. It will also add some uniformity to the doll. I've decided also to paint a little bit of gesso on the branches just to connect the piece a little bit better. After I may paint on top of that, I'm really not sure, but we'll see how it unravels. And here we have it. So I look forward to working with you for part 2, and we'll be creating more features on our doll and making her look a little bit more Frida-like. All right, see you then.